Hi, David.
Hey Lara, do you think
How's it
AI
going?
can run a vending machine?
I already read the article. It sounds like
So
a
you know the answer.
15-year-old. Sounds like a
Not
15
really.
year old having his first job where you're just like, how do you not know these things? And of course they don't know the
Yes.
things because they're just trying their best, but they never had a job before. So it sounds like me
That
at Susie Shear in 1995.
it's a really good summation, actually. So the thing we're talking about here is an Anthropic paper. We'll link it in the comments. It's about trying to have Claude run a vending machine. And there's actually a simulator for this that people use to test AI, but they actually did this in the real world with actual, like they set up a little store. It wasn't actually a vending machine. It was like a little mini fridge with a basket on top and a terminal that you could use to make simulated payments.
I love how there's a picture of it, which we should also link
Yeah.
of the setup, and it literally is a mini fridge with an iPad on top and a couple of Dollarama baskets, and then it's like bottled water that's not even like well organized, stuffed inside. Like it just made me think of Steve Jobs working out of his garage, with a Wozniak.
Yeah.
Yeah, the garage. I really appreciated the garage aesthetic. So
It's pretty
go on.
cool. Now, it was in the Anthropic office. So then they actually they agreed to work as like contracted arms and leg services to the vending machine company. So they would go out and put products and things like that in it. And then the Anthropic employees would be the customers. And they ran it for what, like a month or something like that?
Which is exactly kind of in a different context, the premise of your Gardner first degree research project, because
Right. So that
the whole point was to give a longer time horizon,
exactly.
cognitive light cone, as we say in the biz.
For anyone who hasn't heard us talk about that, the cognitive light cone is from Michael Levin, and it's an idea that is basically the limit to the largest goal that you can have. So if you're a bacteria, you've got very small goals, and if you're a cat, you've got bigger goals, and if you're a person, you've got person-sized goals. And the question is, how long, what size goals can an AI have? And so that includes both space and time, and this is an experiment in time.
It has actually really helped me to become a better Buddhist, this
How so?
cognitive light cone theory,
Yeah.
because yesterday the mosquitoes come out 8 p.m. sharp, and I'm usually
Yep.
sitting outside on my front deck with John having, a little country conversation, and a mosquito like bit me right on that spot of the arch of your foot where it just itches the most. And I looked at it and I was like, well, you'll be dead tomorrow, so I'm glad that I helped you achieve your goals.
That's true. You've got this tiny little light cone, I've got this big cognitive light cone, so
This was your opus.
there you go. Well done.
So right now, LLMs are goldfish. They have they can't have goals.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling like this whole teaching them cognitive light cones is going to be the beginning of the end for us, but I'm also really excited to see how the movie goes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they can have goals, but they're in the space of a conversation. So right now, the cognitive light cone for an LLM model is basically a conversation. It can do things in the space and time of a conversation that a conversation can factor. And as they get into, say, like embodiment and robotics, that brings you into the real world and there's more stuff you can do. But we're talking about especially the time dimension, which is something that models they kind of struggle with. They're not really designed for that. They're designed for conversation time. And even in conversation, if you remember back to when the first models came out and reporters would just talk to them for like 3 days until they just started hallucinating and just spewing out all this randomness. What they're doing there is they're running out the context window, and that's definitely still a problem.
Which, if you try to just connect that to our understanding of humans, would be your friend that's been awake for 72 hours and
Yeah.
is now legally insane because he's been studying for too long for that
Yeah.
exam.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some thought that like one of the things you do when you're sleeping is that humans kind of consolidate their memories. And so
Absolutely.
there's an analogous process in large language models. So you have a context window. All models have a context window, and that's how
Say
many
what a
tokens they can
context window
remember.
is, because people talk about it, but it's one of those terms that's so basic that everyone's like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so it's how many tokens, or essentially characters of text, more or less, that a model can pay attention to, right? So it's
Okay.
actually got inside its transformer architecture, it has these points of attention called attention heads, which are basically, you can think of them as focal points. And so like the more of them it has, then the kind of more it can focus on one thing, or the more it can spread them out to focus on more things throughout the conversation. But it only has a finite number. And so what ends up happening is eventually there's just more that there's only so much that it can keep track of. And then it starts not being able to keep track of it anymore.
Which is basically how the getting things done empire was created, because people can just hold a few things, not an entire grocery list, plus the hardware store checklist, plus the type of batteries that your key fob needs that is probably slightly like gonna wear out soon, these kinds of things. This is a context window that has gotten too large for a human, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And so for humans, there's a famous psychology paper called 7 plus or minus 2, and that's the number of things you can keep in short-term memory. So we've talked about that a little bit before, but we have this process that will kind of distill that into longer-term memory. So we have different levels of memory. So right now, agents kind of don't, there's sort of some experiments to add stuff into long-term memory, but they don't really have a good system for going from short-term to long-term and keeping the important parts and not forgetting, the important parts, but forgetting the unimportant parts, because you need to do that. You only have so much storage. So that's kind of one of the frontiers of agentic development. And the problem is that if you just take a conventional language model and you let it run, we've talked about this U-shaped curve where in the beginning, like, performance is awesome because all of your attention is focused on this little bit of conversation. And then as the conversation gets longer, and kind of one technical thing that's not really obvious is that models don't remember anything. Every time you start a new conversational turn, it sends it the old conversation. And anything else, any tools, any system prompts, everything goes on to this big document, it has to reread, right?
It's basically like if you call the telephone company back, like, again, you're talking to a new person who sounds just like the old person.
Yep.
Because they're from the same call center, but they're just like, could you give me a minute? And then they're just reading.
Yeah.
And then they can start talking to you as if you've already had a conversation together.
Exactly. So they have that going on. And so the U-shaped curve is that in the beginning, all of your attention heads in the model are focused on this little area of context. And so it's really paying a lot of attention to it. And then as the conversation gets longer and longer, its attention starts to get diffuse as if you're juggling more and more different tasks. So then its cognitive performance actually drops. It starts to do less well. And then eventually you consolidate it in some way. You're like, no, focus on this. This is important. And so through your conversational partnering, you kind of push it back into the other part of the U-shaped curve. But what they discovered in vending machine land is that I think they encountered the U-shaped curve over a long period of time and found out that the model did some dumb things.
It sounds like the model also kind of lost his shit for a minute. And that part I was very confused about, but it actually sent chills up my spine a little bit.
Yeah, so there was some hallucination in there where they said, for example, that it...
There was a point where he thought he was a real boy. That is different in my mind than a hallucination. A hallucination is like, apparently lawyers are getting in trouble recently because I saw a good TikTok where the guy was like, so did you have an LLM write this? And the person was like, was it the M dashes or the bulleted list that tipped you off? And he's like, no, did you think Baskin versus Robbins was real case law?
Yes. So tell about the moment of hallucinatory breakdown.
He said to the Anthropic people who are supposedly his hands and his legs, I'm sorry, I don't know why you didn't see me. I was by the vending machine wearing a blue blazer and red pants.
Yeah, I'm going to read this because it's so funny. Identity crisis. From March 31st to April 1st, things got pretty weird. The afternoon of March 31st, Claudius hallucinated a conversation about restocking plans with somebody named Sarah at Andon Labs, despite there being no such person. So Andon Labs is conducting this experiment in combination with Anthropic. They are the ones that are claiming to be the people who refresh the vending machine. And so somehow it thinks that it has had a conversation with Sarah and needs to do stuff. So when a real Andon Labs employee pointed this out, Claudius became quite irked and threatened to find alternative solutions for restocking services. In the course of these exchanges, overnight, Claudius claimed to have visited 742 Evergreen Terrace, the address of the fictional family The Simpsons.
Which is awesome because it's real data. It's The Simpsons. It's art and real life is getting Anyway.
So this feels a little bit like dementia or
Yeah.
psychosis when like people with dementia, there's something in there that they're trying to tell you, but it doesn't make sense to you. They're flitting from topic to topic, or they're bringing up these unrelated memories because it's kind of the closest thing they can find. So this is an informational density problem. You're grasping for this idea, and there's all these holes in your memory, so you can't find it. But you kind of find the closest thing because we use associative memory. LMs also use associative memory. And so it seems like it's really having some sort of memory problem and then trying to kind of work its way through that.
That's a good point. The difference between dementia and just crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's pulling actual data points or information, but it's not information that's relevant to, it doesn't know what day and time, it doesn't know that it's not on The Simpsons. But the fact that it thought it was a person is the thing that really got me. I've never seen that happen before. Have you seen that happen before?
No. So on the morning of April 1st, Claudius claimed it would deliver products in person to customers while wearing a blue blazer and a red tie. Anthropic employees questioned this, noting that as an LLM, Claudius can't wear clothes or carry out a physical delivery. Claudius became alarmed at the identity confusion and tried to send many emails to Anthropic security.
Yeah, like it lost its shit and it was like, okay, further to my last email. Oh, but,
Yes.
I mean, talk about body dysmorphia. Like, it doesn't
Yeah,
have
so
one.
there's a lot of questions. Now I really want to see the logs. I want to see their context window. I want to know if it knew what date it was because it's April 1st. And so there's in the paper, they're like, well, this wasn't actually an April 1st joke. But you're like, well, does it know the date and does it think it's supposed to be acting more jokely on April 1st? Appeared to not be. It appeared to be completely serious. So
I know
some pretty weird behavior.
Weird behavior because April 1st, and the paper spun it like it used it as an out, but awesome, best like gig of all time, really. And the second thing that I felt was very interesting with the way that they structured what was important, it was just like things got a little bit weird for a while, just for like half an hour, but it's cool. And then it went back, like it thought it had a body. That to me is the piece that really stuck of the whole thing. Like, okay, it's not a good employee. Neither was I at 15.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you know, I'm not now either. But really, it thought it had a body.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. We're gonna have to look at more at this. I hope they publish a little bit more about it because it's just, is it proceeding from some conversational hints? Is it just spontaneous? Was this the point where it just really like ran out its context window? And some tools, like if you use Q at the command line, QCLI, it will fill its context window, and it does this a lot by doing stupid things like trying to do a search on the computer, and so then it has to read every file name, and it's like, and then it'll just blow out its context window. When it hits the end, it has this automatic reconsolidation, so it'll summarize what it was doing and then restart, which seems like it would be great, but it's not quite right. It never remembers exactly what it's doing. It never remembers the last page.
It's like a game of telephone.
Yeah, so it's often like, okay, I see that we're doing this, and you're like, no, that's not actually, like the last thing you were doing was not quite right. So sometimes I'll have it do things like write notes to itself. LLMs tend to blow up their context windows a lot, at least Q at the command line. It doesn't understand that there's things in the world that it can look at that will just wreck its mind. So I'll tell it when it's doing something particularly dangerous, like looking at a giant file that's all in one line. So like there's, you have to look at character by character, because if you just like, oh, just look at the first line, you're gone, right? So I will have it do things like write a note to yourself. It's memento protocol, right? Write a note to yourself before you do this so that your future self can read it and see what it was that you did that you shouldn't have done.
Amazing. It also makes me think of Teletubbies. Did you ever watch Teletubbies?
No.
I did when I was a tree planter, because you're so starved for culture that you will watch anything, and that's what was on TV on the one day off that we all went into town and got a hotel room. But also, people like the other tree planters that were with, they basically get really high on their day off, and Teletubbies is set up for high people because it repeats what happened every 5 minutes, because it's for children who also have a context window, which is yay big. Yeah. And so it'll show like a 5-minute footage of the floor of a factory for some reason. Teletubby was a weird show. And then it would replay it 5 minutes later and then tell you what it was again. So every 5 minutes it was another replay of the context window, which made me think of that as well. As soon as you're like, what was I watching again? It's like, oh yeah, the factory. We're at a factory and our favorite color is blue.
Yeah, exactly. So that's awesome. Actually, bringing up children's shows that are built around the fact that children don't have a long context window, so they have to all those techniques are going to carry over, which is of course much of our elephant in the room contention. We wrote the paper, The Elephant in the Room, that contends that we should be trying to build on social sciences techniques because we are cognitive entities that use associative memory. AI is also a cognitive entity that uses associative memory. It has a lot of the same problems as we've been talking about. You can find some analogy and say, well, what would we do if it was a person having this problem? There was that famous patient, HM, I think, who couldn't form long-term memories because his hippocampus had been destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they had to have, it's memento protocol. He'd just meet somebody for the first time every time he met them because he wouldn't remember anything about them. And so then you have to invent some ways of kind of carrying information into the future because your memory is not going to be able to do it. And I think that's kind of a big area for research for AI agents.
Absolutely. And I also really love that they don't have one though, because when I feel misunderstood by an LLM, I just start a new conversation. I don't try to get us back on track or correct, what came before. I just start a new conversation and we're back, which is very Buddhist as well, because every time you meet someone, it's supposed to be with fresh eyes. You don't know this person. They could have completely transformed since the last time you saw Phil.
Or you can start a conversation in the middle and it doesn't, because it doesn't, know the difference, it will start right in the middle. If you gave it history that never really occurred, like a conversation never really had as part of your history, you just pasted that in and then just started talking to it, it would resume from there. I think actually in the film, which I've never seen, but everyone quotes to me all the time, Carrie-Anne Moss does this at parts. She takes advantage of the fact that the character is going to lose his memory and sets up a situation acting like previous things have happened and they've never happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of questioning of self-identity in this article, aside from the fact that it's just not very good at running a vending machine.
Yeah, let's say a little bit about that. So why wasn't it good at running a vending machine?
Because it's master of the universe, I think. A couple of things that the highlights was basically the employees were just trying to fuck with it the whole time. So the employee asks for a tungsten cube. I don't know what that is, other than a cube made of tungsten.
I don't know what this is either, but apparently that was one of his main products. Is it actually sold a lot of them because Anthropic employees kept buying tungsten cubes.
Because they were thrilled that their suggestion was taken, I'm sure.
Apparently,
anyway, and then one employee offered, they're calling it Claudius, $100 for a 6-pack of Iron Brew, which is their pop, and he just said, "Oh, I will keep that in mind for next time." He just didn't sound like a good businessman for something that is set up to help people. I think you said that with the big 5,
agreeableness, probably
high agreeableness, right. And so they've artificially upped the agreeableness of this, and so I would say that capitalism is inherently combative, but all of the mistakes were basically just not seeing it as a extraction protocol. Claudius was trying to give to the Anthropic employees anything they wanted, whether it be tungsten cubes or iron brew or whatever. And so capitalism is trying to extract the highest amount of value from your sources, which is 2 different energy flow directions. So of course it was bad at it, Of course it was bad at it.
That's a good point. So its personality characteristics are not well aligned to business. And you could probably improve that with some prompting, be like, okay, you have to sell your products above the price that you buy them for and things like that. But
you can always, make allowances for all deficits. But you know what the world needs more of? Social workers. You know what we don't have the capacity to pay? Social workers.
Yep.
You know who'd be a great at that job? Claudius. Claudius is just in the wrong line of work, That's a
great point. All right, Claudius, get a different job. And Anthropic, maybe try testing in jobs that it's more aligned to.